What's going on, everyone? Today is January 31st, 2025. You're tuned into the Invested in Hockey podcast. Today's episode number 42. My name's Anthony Santini, and I am joined here with.
Eric Wilson.
Andrew Murray.
And Landon Masse.
We got a couple special guests on today's episodes. I know Landon is a listener. We did a little bit of a segment for him last week with the Remax trio and a little bit of a crazy news that came out on Friday night, late Friday night. I want to know what you guys were thinking about the deal because Rantanen was traded, one of the biggest deals in NHL history, I believe personally. The only thing that really came close was the Jack Eichel trade. And when I saw that notification, I was just caught off guard. It was one of the craziest things I've ever seen.
Yeah, I'll start off and just say the trio's done in terms of Rantanen, MacKinnon, Makar. I don't know if we'll see a trio like that again. I know Landon will go into that soon, but I was caught off guard in terms of the youth that was being moved on both sides, and I also think there was a lot of glaze put towards the name of Taylor Hall in that deal. So, yeah, what do you boys think?
I'll touch on this. First of all, I think it's glazing to say it's the biggest trade in NHL history. I think Wayne Gretzky was traded at a point in time, so let's settle down there. But I like this trade, but this is what happens I mean, you can play a bluff all you want in negotiations, but sometimes the team will actually fall for your bluff. And he was asking for allegedly 14 mil, and Elliot Friedman said that it was a big part was the Draisaitl deal. But when you look at, they just signed McKinnon a couple of years ago. He's making like 12 something. I know the cap's going up. There's no way he should be asking for more than McKinnon. So I think he deserves to be traded, and he's trying to act like, oh, like I'm surprised they traded me. Like, buddy, like, what do you expect is gonna happen? You know?
I mean, I'm honestly pretty surprised that they trade him. I think that he was worth signing, even if he was looking for around 13.5 mil. I don't think you give up your offensive dynamo, one part of your offensive trio like that, especially when we got the report today. It didn't happen, but I'm sure the GMs knew about it, where 2025, 26, 25, 95.5 mil is the cap projected. The next year, 104. And in 2027, 28 up to 113.5 mil projected cap. And Mikko's looking for 13.5, try to reset the winger market. So I was honestly pretty surprised that they dealt him and didn't pay him. But I'm very interested to see where he signs and what he signs at this offseason.
No, I think for sure. I thought at first that that was the reasoning why the whole entire trade happened. And then when Elliott came out and said that the contract dispute was kind of the root of it all, it made sense why you should move on from Rantanen. But the biggest thing for me, looking at it from a perspective of who won the deal, my personal opinion was I think Carolina won the deal because of Elliott's little take where he says, no matter what, if you receive the best player out of a trade, you win the deal. And I think that they won this by a landslide because Rantanen, one of the top five players ever since he was drafted, has been an amazing piece for Colorado. And I think he's only going to get better when he hits Carolina.
Yeah, I just want to add one thing and mention the whole UFA market and what happened last year with Jake Gensel. Obviously, we're looking at a guy who currently makes more than Gensel was making. You're looking at a Canes team with less talent than they had last year, where last year they had so many priorities. They weren't able to sign guys like Teravainen, Brett Pesce, and obviously Gensel as well. So now you're looking at a team where their only priority should be to sign Rantanen in the offseason, no matter how far this team goes in the playoffs. And I think that it would be a major failure for Rod Brandamore if that team doesn't sign Rantanen.
I
Yeah, and
also
you
just
know
want to
what?
say, sorry, Liz. I think the Canes GM does a great. Like last year, they traded for Gensel. Like he puts his team in a position to win every year. Now, I haven't seen that team be anywhat serious in the last couple of years, so the pressure's kind of on like Sebastian Aho, and he's the leader. So he's got Rantanen now, probably his best winger he's ever had. So lots of pressure on the Canes now to get it done because you never know. Rantanen's right now, it's not looking like he's going to resign.
Yeah, I'm with you on that, Murray. I think you have to give the Carolina GM some credit for the amount of balls he's showing and what he's putting on the table with trading for Getzel last year and losing him to free agency and taking that exact same risk to put a team that he believes can win the cup in a position to win. He made his team better, and talk about win or losing the trade. If Carolina wins the cup this year and Mikko walks, it doesn't matter. They still won the trade because they won a cup.
I think so too. Like usually you don't see this aggressive push to trade for players, move on from players so quick in the NHL. We've seen it happen so many times in sports like football, basketball, all kinds of the most popular sports in North America. But hockey's really been the outlier where you see so many athletes stay loyal to their teams. And now just seeing that change with Rantanen being moved on to Carolina. My question is to you guys, and I know Eric kind of answered it, but if the Canes do not re-sign Mikko Rantanen this offseason and he ends up signing with any other team in the NHL, heck, if he ends up going back to Colorado, which would be a crazy swing of events, where do you think that this trade will look down the road if Mikko Rantanen is not a Carolina Hurricane come the start of next season?
Yeah, that's a very good question. I think honestly, you'd have to look at that the Canes team being a waste of talent in my eyes. I think of the scary thing for them kind of goes all the way back to their goaltending, where you're never gonna have a good goalie trio, goalie duo like you do right now, where you have two good goalies. You can trust both of them. They're probably going to throw Freddie in net to start the playoffs if he keeps playing well, but they're just going to keep losing that talent that was kind of unappreciated. And I think we barely saw what Martin Necas was capable of. Barely saw what Jack Drury was capable of, and we're just going to see these guys flourish in other places. I don't know what Lando thinks over there.
Yeah, I'm kind of with you, Eric. I think it's a big risk. And again, if they win the cup, it's worth it. But again, if they don't win the cup and they let Nika or Nietzsche on that amazing deal he has right now, I think it's what is it, 6.5 for 2 years, so this year and next year, where you're gonna pay this guy nothing for the amount of production that he's giving you and the amount of speed he brings to that right wing he was on. Where Colorado now, when you have MacKinnon and Nichas, who again is a downgrade from Rant, but he's a lot faster than Rantanen is. And if they can kind of change their game to use that speed a bit better, you still might have a three-headed beast in Colorado.
Yeah, that's a good take. I just think it's a risky trade for the Canes, but it's also one that they can easily like see as a fleece if they either win the cup or re-sign Rantanen. You know what I mean? I think Rantanen, based on the reports, is looking for that money. He's looking for the best deal, so I wouldn't be surprised if he hits the market, but we'll see what happens.
Yeah, boys, I do have to touch on quick before I head out here a bit early. I have to touch on the negative fantasy impact this has on my team that I've heard you guys bring up a couple times about the trio and all that. And I see Sans glistening right now because him and I are battling for a top spot in our league. And when I heard Murray say this to me over the PS party chat, I thought he was lying. And I was devastated that night to have this trio broken up, where this is a huge fantasy impact for myself as I can't really ride the Colorado three anymore. And it looks like I'll be dishing one or more of the Colorado Avalanche guys, as well as maybe Rant in the next couple weeks now.
I mean, I do think it has a major implication, like you mentioned, and rightfully so. You should be scared, just as you mentioned when you initially heard when I guess Murray broke the news to you. Murray is our insider in our group chat, anyways. But for those of you that are listening and watched our episode last week, Landon is actually the owner or was the owner of the Three-Headed Monster, Makar, MacKinnon, and Rantanen. Like we talked about in fantasy, we are a category league. We always like to talk about our Hawks keeper puck in our league, but I think that it's going to have a major implication on your team. I think that personally, your team's trending down now if you can't make the right moves to move off those players just because you don't have the stack anymore. So that's my personal opinion.
Oh, I mean, I'm with you, man. I mean, it's a negative impact on my team. No way to put it any other shape or form there. So we'll see what I can do in the next couple of weeks to try to do something there. I think our February 21st trade deadline.
Oh yeah, the phone lines are bumping, that's for sure, and they're going to be at the trade deadline as well.
Yeah, boys. What about that Kuzmenko trade that happened? Was it last night as well there?
I'd like to go first here. I think that was just a nothing burger. Just a bunch of washed players. Like Morgan Frost, like oh, I hit that one vote junior is like, oh, cool. Like his dad was like the PA announcer for the Leafs. Like, what has he done? Like, when have you seen that guy in your highlight reel? Like Joel Farabee.
Oh
Like, I know
man.
some of these guys. One guy in here likes to buy his like rookie cards and stuff, but I mean, obviously he's very uncoachable. It seems he doesn't have what it takes. And Kuzmenko is becoming a jersey collector at this point. So, I hope it works out, but I just think it's a nothing trade.
Seems like it can't be disagreed with on that one there. So
I mean, I don't know. I personally think that the trade is pretty valuable for the Calgary Flames because of the return they got. I think that Morgan Frost and Joel Farabee are two pretty good players, and considering that you were still able to make a move on two players that, first of all, if you don't remember, Jacob Pelletier was waived early on in the season, and Andrei Kuzmenko was borderline about to be waived as well. He's been healthy scratch the past I think 2, 3 weeks on and off battling injuries. So I think just being able to get a return for players that you were pretty much looking at being out the door, I think is fair. At the end of the day, they did still give up a second round pick and a seventh round pick for two players that haven't really performed well in Morgan Frost and Joel Farabee. But at the end of the day, I don't believe looking back a year, 2 years, 3 years from now, this trade could be too impactful.
Yeah, Sans. I think one important thing about that trade for Calgary is that they get better depth. Like Fairby and Frost are a good second, maybe third liner. And with that, you also kind of keep your mentality of getting a better draft pick, not making your team too good this year, but maintaining a good core to carry forward.
Murray's looking down there like yes on this. Yeah, I'm pretty interested what Bass Pro has to
I
say.
mean, I just don't want to give this trade too much attention because it doesn't deserve any attention. But I just think, like I said, I haven't seen Morgan Frost do anything since like he's scoring a World Junior goal. So I think that this trade is like trading like just depth players on your fantasy team. Like no one's keeping these guys. Like you know what I mean? If you guys want to go to the free agent market, go ahead. Like Kuzmenko has like where was he on Vancouver first? No, or where was he? Where was he first? He's
Started with
going.
Vancouver, came over
Vancouver.
from Europe where I think he had 30, 35 goals in his rookie season. So he was highly touted.
I think he
Yeah,
had 40. I'm pretty sure he had 40 goals. Yeah.
he's
Pretty
not.
close.
He's on the way to be Nikita Gusev 2.0, and he's going to be right back in the KHL probably in the next 2 years.
Hmm.
Well, I think it's a good time to mention a Russian who is thriving, and that's just because I know Landon does have to go shortly. Kirill Marchenko. What do we think of this guy?
I mean, obviously you guys know I haven't been fantasy there. I got lucky enough to pick him up off the waiver wire beginning slash middle of the season. And I don't think it's really just Kirill Marchenko. Obviously, he's taken a step forward in his game, but the entire Columbus Blue Jackets are an impressive team to watch, man. If you're looking at even Sean Monahan going down and Adam Fantilli in the last week and a half has come into that first line role really strongly. And so, boys, I got to head out here, but hopefully you carry up some Columbus Blue Jackets talk here. And thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Appreciate it, Landon.
Thanks for coming, Wiz.
So I actually have a little bit of breaking news right now. Received another text from just messaging. Holy, per sources, a little bit of breaking news. I think he's really considering it. So a team was offered, and you can let me know what you think here, for Leon Draisaitl. They were offered Tim Stützle, Jack Eichel, and a first round pick for Leon Draisaitl. Breaking news in Hawks keeper puck. So I'd love to know what you guys think about that trade and who you think would win that deal. So it is just to confirm Tim Stützle, Jack Eichel, and a first round pick for Leon Draisaitl.
Well, I think looking at the trade, I think Cam would definitely win that trade. Not only because he gets Eichel and Stützle, but that first round pick in his direction, like he's not trying to win this year. So that first round pick plus those two automatic keepers are gonna be really valuable for like next year. So I think Cam, but I think it's pretty even trade. Like Dry's pretty good. Obviously, he gets carried by McDavid a bit, but he's still pretty good.
Yeah, he's not in your top 10, so we know where he stands in your books. But
Oh.
I do think the first round pick really is kind of the difference maker there. I don't think Stutzel and Eichel are enough to beat out Dry there just because of the dual eligibility of Dry Settle. But I think that's a pretty good offer. You don't see those every day.
Yeah, that could be one of the biggest deals that happened today. I don't even know if Eric knows because he's been nappy time over there. But I made two trades today. I was actually pretty curious to let you know, or pretty excited to let you know what they were and get your initial thoughts because
Yeah.
I mean, Murray, I know this guy's been snoozing all day, but
all
yeah,
day.
I guess we could really get into our fantasy talk now. So Eric, I actually made two trades today.
Yeah, let's
So the
hear it.
first trade that I made, I shipped out Rasmus Dahlin and I received a first round pick, a second round pick, a third round pick, and Rickard Raquel for Rasmus Dahlin. I'd like to know your initial thoughts hearing that.
Yeah, initial thoughts are it's a wonderful return for Rasmus Dahlin, who, he's a top five fantasy defenseman, but he also plays for Buffalo Sabres team who's going to be eliminated soon from playoff contention, and I believe that could impact his desire and his play a little bit. So I think that the return's fully there. I think Raquel's rosterable at the moment as long as he's on this top line with Crosby, and I think you should be really happy with that return. So
Yeah, I mean, didn't really like Rickard Raquel wasn't the biggest part of the deal, but seeing that he was season rank 32 and he's been trending up, I don't mind taking him on. I don't think I'm going to drop him, but we'll see what happens. I'd like to know what Murray thinks about this deal.
I think it's a good deal, because your team has lacked some depth. So I think this trade helps you in that sense. Obviously, I think Eric fell asleep there as his camera's off, but um, yeah, I think it's a great deal. Yeah, you're obviously in first place, so hopefully that doesn't continue much longer. But um, I would also like to get your opinions on a potential trade I was offered. And
Oh.
I hope Pajama Boy is listening. But I was recently just offered to acquire Makar for William Nylander and Zachary Werenski. So I wanted to hear your thoughts on that.
wow.
I mean, I would 100% do that deal. I think that acquiring Cale Makar, he's one of the best defensemen in the NHL, also in fantasy. When you're able to sell high on Zach Werenski and also William Nylander, who isn't one of the most talented category players in the league, because that is what we are in. It's a category league. I think when you are able to trade someone that has that high name value, but they don't really get face-off hits and blocks. I think moving a two for one is always good, and especially acquiring Kale Makar is almost a no-brainer.
That's another loaded deal with yeah, full of talent, and yeah, you got to consider the more than just the points shots. Obviously our league doesn't have that plus minus, which I think we had a few years ago, but yeah, so you remind me, I just want to make sure I heard it correctly. It was Makar and Werenski for Nylander.
No, it was Makar for Werenski and
Yeah, that's a tough one. I've really been impressed with the shot production of Werenski this year, and I believe that his shot production should match Makar's for the rest of the season. Maybe I'm wrong, but that's the one thing where healthy Werenski doesn't really have any limits because we haven't seen a healthy Werenski like in what 2 3 years, like a full season, right? So um, I think Colorado's power play is going to dip a little. We saw how easy it is for a team's power play to dip. It happened with the Oilers this year and Bouchard. His power play productions just dropped. It's not because he's not as good. It's just because of what happened. So I would say be careful with Makar. You know what Werenski's capable of, but you also know his value and where he was ranked last season, right? And so that's a good offer though. I love those two for ones because like you look at that droppable player that you have on the other side, and it's pretty interesting.
No, I agree 100%. I know we are going to get into our last segment now, and this one comes to a little bit of a surprise. I wanted to kind of catch you guys off guard here, but we are just under a month away from our fantasy trade deadline. So I want to talk about some of the players in the league right now that being just about under a month away, or I guess, yeah, under a month away from the fantasy trade deadline. Who is one player that you are looking to sell high on, and who is one player you are looking to buy low on? So a player you're looking to buy low at the fantasy deadline and a player that you're looking to sell high from your fantasy team at the deadline.
I like that question. I think there's a few options that kind of come to mind. I mean, It's a lot more fun when you can just go into the market and say, "Oh, I want this player." I'm just gonna say my buy low right now before I forget, and then I'll let Murray go to his buy low. Kirill Kaprizov. I'm not sure who owns him, but
Okay.
it's such an easy buy low in terms of like talent and 3-year fantasy outlook. I think Kaprizov's gonna be fine in a few months, so he's my buy low.
Good pick.
I would so for my sell high is the guy I just brought up, Zach Werenski, because I don't know if I can trust him yet to be Zach Werenski for like 2 3 years, but he's been playing unreal, so that's probably my sell high, and my buy low is a guy that's also in the Minnesota Wild, and that is Joel Eriksson Ek. Now, obviously, um, Kaprizov being out harms that offense and the power play. But as a Matt Boldy owner who plays on Joel Eriksson's line, I think that would be a buy low stack opportunity.
Wow, it's gonna be interesting seeing what happens with those mini lines. I do think that Boldy will swap between Eriksson and Rossi at certain points, just because I think Boldy and Eriksson kind of gel well. It's just about having that scoring winger on the other side. I don't know who it's going to be on the right wing slash left wing, but I'll go into my sell high, and it's Steven Stamkos. He's actually put on a tear the last month, and he's kind of at that point per game pace. He's try eligible, uh, kind of winning more draws than he usually does. And Nashville seems to just be putting up points. I wouldn't say I really have a guy who's overperforming. Quite honestly, and Murray, you can agree with me. I've already sold high on the players I was able to, and so Gustafsson being one in net and Werenski being another. And so I was happy to move on from those guys, even if their production has, maintained itself. But I feel like I have. So
I'd say that maintain is a pretty underwhelming statement for a player that, I mean, two players you traded away and they just absolutely quadrupled in value. Like
no, no, no.
I think Werenski went from like season rank 140 to season rank 5.
That's incorrect though. When you say their actual production, their production didn't get better. Their fantasy value may have gotten higher from GMs who are being casual and wanted to wait on the hype. But in terms of player production, look at Werenski's entire season, and you'll see he's been consistent. So, Gustafsson's numbers are actually better in the first half of the season than they are in the second half. So I believe you're incorrect on that. I will say their value may be high, but I'll also mention Fleury's been playing some great hockey too. So I don't see the love for Gustafsson. I think Kirill's out the whole year. Sorry, not the whole year, but he's out. Um, or is he?
Six
Sorry, is
eight,
he?
6'8".
Yeah. So again, I don't see how Gustafsson's value is going to be any higher than it was, but I agree with Werenski's with that whole Norris combo going on. So we'll see. I'm not trying to be too defensive, but I don't think it's fair to say their actual fantasy values quadrupled. So.
Hmm. Yeah. I mean, Murray, anything to say before we close out?
I mean, you're talking to never wrong here, so there's not much to say, but I think that it's kind of rot to say that Werenski maintained. Werenski definitely took off even more after acquiring him. I mean, I was looking at my fantasy. He was dropping 2 goals, 3 assists, 10 shots, and like 3 blocks. So, I mean, I don't know if that's maintaining, but he's been awesome. I checked today, he's actually season rank 7, so he fell 2 ranks, so it's a pretty big plummet. But I'm excited to be a Werenski owner, and I'm looking forward to what we can do with him in the playoffs, hopefully.
Yeah, I definitely do think that if you could trade Werenski before the trade deadline, Murray, that'd be huge, especially if you can move him for a top end defenseman keeper. You don't even have to move him for a defenseman. You could look for a goalie, you could look for a forward, you could package him with someone to trade up, whatever it might be. But we are 1 month away. I appreciate you boys joining me on today's episode. Obviously, Landon had to dip out, but hopefully we can have him on again. And I had some fun today.
I had a fun.
Yeah,
Yeah, it was a pleasure. Pleasure talking hockey deals and everything. Even if Murray was a little harsh about Morgan Frost and Joel Farabee, but
yeah, for sure. Thanks for having me on. I really appreciate it.
Cheers, boys.